Now, how has those experiences as a student with important mentors affected you? Because you're a esteemed teacher at Temple. Are you still at University of the Arts too, or?
Yeah.
Okay. Has that affected how you teach your own, mentor your own?
Many things, yes.
Like what?
Well, first of all, not having one size fits all. Some people, well, it depends on what knowledge they're coming in with. You hear them play a few things and you can see what the holes are. And then, you know, some people I might have to be a stickler for basics. You know, play these tunes this week and don't use anything other than 1, 3, 5, and 7 in your lines. You know, make yourself zero in on that specific sound, you know, because everything's possible in improv. So how do we get control of any one sound so it's at our service when we want it? You know, there's one note difference from the regular major scale from Lydian, completely different sound. And even two different behaviors of, like, say, the F sharp and the key of C. If you use it as a passing tone, there's nothing Lydian about the sound at all. If you feature it prominently as a center, then it sounds Lydian. And it doesn't matter what it's called, but it's a different color. And if you're not aware of that color, then, you know, because a lot of times people will learn they'll learn the Lydian from all this Herbie and Wayne Shorter stuff, and then they'll get on a gig with somebody like Larry, where it's not going to apply on every single major chord they get to. You know, so some people need that. I have to say the most talented students I've taught, most of them were terrible students. Which is, in other words, I could show them some stuff, but they didn't really need it because they had great ears and they evolved. You know, they had holes, but they would, like, I addressed my own holes from gigs. I would do a gig, like with Larry, I became aware of my lack of a bebop foundation for for anything. And so for the next 2 years, I listened to almost nothing but Sonny Stitt. I became obsessed with Sonny Stitt. And yeah, and I'd say that's colored my approach even to free playing, at least linear free playing. But what was the topic you were talking about before that?
You know, how the way you were taught and mentored,
Oh.
how does that bleed into what you teach your own students? And yeah.
Right, some people I just let them come in and play a tune and just say, you know, zero in on a specific thing that happened or didn't happen or what they could use or, you know, how to get more colors in the voicings or, you know, base it on, you know, some people learn best by that. Some people learn best from an A to Z thing. And I let everyone know about, you know, I can no longer in good conscience tell people to play these killer old school Hannon exercises for finger strength, because it turns out that piano playing doesn't require finger strength. It requires alignment. So I tell them that, and I tell them that of the existence of the Taubman, but I've only had I've only had like 2 or 3 that have the temperament to deal with the long haul of it. Even though I'd have to say that was one of the best decisions I ever made in my life was to do that.
Well, it's prolonged your playing life, is what, you know, I mean.
Yeah, but it's also made.
Yeah. Just notice he's always.
Yeah.
Oh, it's also made, I think, ideally, I mean, I don't know if other people notice it, I feel that it's given me more access to the musicality, you know, beyond the notes.
Now, let me ask you about this, because you've done competitions. How many competitions have you done?
Only two.
Okay.
The first one was a classical one in high school that I won.
Okay, and the second was the one in Paris?
Yeah.
Tell us about how you prepared for that.
The one in Paris?
Yeah, and why you didn't continue on a competition path, because I know there is a path for competition. Or,
Well, there's more. Back then, there wasn't that many for jazz.
tell us about the Paris one, describe it a little bit.
Okay, well, it started with 227 applicants through a cassette tape in the mail. And so then I was invited. Then I had to figure out how to pay for all the flights and hotels. And I didn't expect to get that far, but I had to be ready to stay there for 3 weeks because each round took a while. So there were 75 people that played. So the first round took 4 days. So preparing though, before I went, they had certain requirements you had to do for different rounds. The first round, I think you had to do an original. Yeah, then they had a list of approved standards or bebop tunes. I don't remember what I played in the first round. Oh, I think they only had like 2 or 3 things listed. I played Stella because that was one of the 3. They had a house rhythm section, which was actually one of the bass players pretty well known now, Francois Moutin. It was him and his brother on drums, but he hadn't moved to New York yet. They were just mainstays of the workaday Paris scene. You know, I wanted to go because I loved Martial Solal's playing. He was the other Frenchman. And he was a friend of Bernard's too. And I got to talk to him. He told me about a gig that he and Bernard had done 4 hands on an old beat up upright one time.
So were you nervous or?
It was pretty intimidating. It was this large auditorium. I did study. I'd taken a couple years of French in high school, but on every break when I was at the Four Seasons, I had this French book. I would go outside and verbalize the French, all the stuff. So I actually got half decent at it. And the first person I met at the orientation day was a Spanish pianist talking Spanish. So I had a year of Spanish too, but it was, but it was pretty cool. It was, for some reason I wasn't as nervous as I should have been. I was most at ease, I think, in the second round, because that was the first time I sort of, just without thinking about it, deconstructed Donna Lee a little bit. And then I played one of my originals that's on the CD, the trio one, Island, but I did it solo. Oh, you had to do a solo piece and 2 trio pieces. I think they had the same rhythm section for that. The third round, they had a pretty well-known drummer, Daniel Humer. And, the bass player was pretty well-known then, too. He died shortly after. Jean-Francois Jenny Clark. He's even played with Sidney Bechet.
Oh, really?
But,
So you came in second, right?
No, I came in 4th. The final round, that was narrowed down to 9 finalists. The money and prizes stopped at 3, but they told me I was 4.
Oh.
But I think I had 3 votes. I had Solal, Hodere, and Tommy Flanagan's.
Voted for you.
Well, that's not bad company.
No. The critiques from the ones that didn't like me, they wanted something fairly splashy to begin with, and I started the final round with an introspective round midnight, which, I mean, I wasn't overly attached to results anyway, but the winners were really good. Aydin Essen from Turkey, Simon Nabatov, a Russian. I forget who the third one was. I think it was Bulgarian.
All right, let me ask you this, and then Jack, if you got, as far as your compositional style, now how do you approach writing your own music? That's very broad, and how does it come to you, or?
Okay, I've only had one tune that wrote itself. That's on my, I guess the first, it's a CD now. Back then, I made 2 recordings with Al Stauffer on this mail order cassette company called Direct-to-Tape, based in South Jersey.
I remember that.
We recorded it at Rowan. One was duo with Al, one was trio, adding Joel Levine on recorder. And yeah, the duo one was called Blue Alterations. That's the only AABA tune I ever wrote, 32 bars. It's the only tune that ever wrote itself. Everything else, I get a very strong initial germinal idea. I've learned to write those down right when they come, usually. And then when I have time, I go back, and the real hard part is fleshing them out. And it takes a while because I won't keep anything that doesn't feel as organic as when I first was improvising, and I would say, oh, I wish I had recorded that, but it never works. If you turn on the recorder, it's just never the same as the initial idea. So I'm not one who knows the compositional craft like the way these full-time composers know. They can start something and, they might struggle with this or that or hesitate or make decisions and revise, but they still have, it's what they do. So.
Do you record yourself when you're trying to fill out
Sometimes. It was a lost cause because I'd be dealing with the tech aspects or the sound quality or slight difference in pitch between what I was hearing on the tape and my piano. It wasn't worth it. It didn't give me anything.
So what inspires you to compose something?
Most of the time, a deadline.
Oh.
I wrote a few things during the first year of the pandemic. One of my students actually commissioned me to write. I had a student who had to stop playing jazz because he had an ear condition that made him not being able to be around drums or amps or anything. So he went to being full-time classical. He commissioned me to write him a classical piece for him to premiere. And so I did. It was called Labyrinths 2020. And he did a nice job, really good job playing it on some video somewhere. I think it's on his YouTube channel. His name's Patrick Fink. And then I got a small grant from the Painted Bride from Lenny Seidman. They gave one to me, Sumi, Ursula Rucker, a few people. It was small, but they said no strings attached, do whatever you want. So I wrote, it took me a year to really get 3 jazz tunes in a form that I like. I also have another problem that I hear. I always hear horns in my head. I'm not really enamored with trios. I enjoy them, but and I enjoy, if I'm on a gig with Lee and Jim or Lee and Dan Monahan or Byron or somebody, I enjoy it. But I love horns. I love being a soloist after a horn player. Sid was the same way. He hated being the first soloist. But yeah, it's sort of hard I have trouble with time management because my writing style is so zen. I start out playing something. If I play something I like, I might put it down. I'll try to flesh it out a little bit. Now, everything I wrote for the CD that was from that year, that wasn't from earlier, I made myself sit down for, even if it was some days it'd be 2 hours, some days it'd be 10 minutes. For each tune that I was working on, I would make myself sit with it and try all different routes to Rome until I found something that felt organic and natural to me.
That's like a writer does too. A writer has to do that sometimes. As far as now, this is my last question for me, but Jack, I'm sure has tons. How did you having that heart attack affect you mentally, spiritually, physically?
Well, it was a wake-up call. I mean, the main reason for me, I did all kinds of healthy stuff anyway. I always walked a lot, did yoga. For years, I've lifted weights so that carrying an electric piano doesn't bother me. My downfall was dietary. The day before my heart attack, I can't imagine if this would have happened in the middle of this, was during recording Sound Path. You know that CD of Bobby's Ankles, where we played the suite commissioned by us from Muhal Richard Abrams.
Yeah.
We recorded it at Drexel. And for a couple of weeks before that, I had been getting these little spells of something felt weird, but I thought it was, pectoral muscles from carrying something or from lifting weights. It would come and go. The next day, I'm teaching at Temple, or I'm getting ready to teach. I'm in this practice room, practicing. And it started happening. I'm thinking, you know what? This might have to do with faulty Taubman technique. Let me work on this. And then I said, no, this is weird enough. I better get it checked out. I didn't know that the pulse has nothing to do with it. I felt my pulse and it seemed normal, so I said, oh, good, it's not the heart. So I drove myself to Abington Hospital, had to park on the roof, had to walk a long way to the triage part of the ER. And they said, what are your symptoms? And I said, I guess it's chest pains. And they started wheeling me around. And then within a couple of minutes, I heard the word coronary. And within an hour, a stent was in me, and I felt good. And so anyway, since then.
How long ago was it?
I think it was 2018. Yeah, this October would make 4 years. Okay. So for some reason, don't ask me why, because it never worked before. I just got away from all the trigger unhealthy stuff that I was eating, went 98% vegan. They said within a week I could resume normal stuff. And the funny thing is, 10 days from then, had a gig with Odin at the Kennedy Center in D.C. And they were worried about me. I said to the cardiologist, I think I'll be ready by the 17th. He goes, yeah. So I told Odin I'd be there. I saw him in 30th Street Station that morning. We rode the train, did the concert. He presented the next year's award. He got a Jazz Masters Award. We did the concert. He presented next year's award to Lou Tabakin. And
So it didn't affect your playing at all?
oh no, not at all. No.
Oh, that's good.
So I guess I have a better sense of life. I think I'm not sure it's that different, but I did get more humble. Like I used to think, oh, that's mind over matter. But this taught me where matter lies.
Yeah. Better brick wall. All right, Jack, what do you have?
I just have kind of one subject which we touched on a little bit, but I want to dive into it a little bit, and then I'll be done. It's just, when you started playing jazz, pretty seriously, this is the mid to late 70s, when you started really getting into the Philly scene, right?
Right.
Like, you mentioned a few of the clubs, but what clubs were like the jazz clubs that you would go to and, hear about?
Well, see, as far as going to hear, famous people, there was one called Just Jazz at 22nd and Arch, 21st and Arch. I saw a lot of people there. I went to a jam session there one night, and Gerald made me sit in.
Okay.
But I saw all kinds of people. I saw Gerald with Dakota Staten.
This is at Just Jazz?
Yeah. I saw Miles with one of his later electric bands. Miles in a zebra skin suit throwing a lit cigarette into the audience. They had a big, they had a keyboard there with a big sign that said Miles Davis on Yamaha organ. Like every 20 minutes he'd walk over and go, sing, and walk away. And he'd take a really short solo on the trumpet, and then he'd stare, smoking, watching the sax player solo for 20 minutes. It was pretty bizarre. Yeah. Oh, I saw one of the best things. I saw 3 nights in a row. I saw Oscar Peterson and Ray Brown duo. Just for that gig, he pulled Ray Brown out of the LA studios and said, "Come on, man, do this gig with me."
This is at Just Jazz also?
Just Jazz, yeah.
Yeah, Grendel's Lair was big then.
That's the other one.
Yeah, Grendel's Lair, I'm trying to think. I don't think I never, other than the jam session, I never played at Just Jazz or Grendel's Lair. Grendel's Lair, though, I saw Gerald back up Richie Cole. I saw Mingus numerous times there. My favorite band of his, The Last Band, with Don Pullen, George Adams, Jack Walrath.
The Foxhole, were you doing anything there?
I didn't play there. I saw everybody there. Bernard, Cecil Taylor, Sonny Stead, Archie Shepp, Jackie.
So that was one of your regular
Jackie
places?
Byard. Yeah, that was a concert venue, not a club.
Right.
The clubs. I mean, the clubs where local players played were Periwinkle.
Was the Porsche Cafe going there, or was that later?
Yeah, I think
It had started.
Bernard was there.
Right, he was there, I guess he started there maybe 74, 75, and Bob Cohen was there with Evelyn Sims, Tyrone.
This is the Borgia.
Yeah.
Right. There was a place in Newmarket too, wasn't there?
Yeah, there were a number of places. I mean, there are plenty of places like now that have jazz that you wouldn't call a jazz club.
Right.
But what was that one? There were a number of them.
Cabaret was one.
Yeah, I did play there a lot.
That was where?
That was on
It was called Le Bistro, Rick's Cabaret at Le
Yeah.
Bistro at
I
front.
played there. Wendy did. All of us did. Joel,
Yeah,
Corey Kane.
Mark Kramer.
Okay, Okay. And
All That Jazz, wasn't that on the?
That came a little later, but yeah, that was something in
Upstairs.
Sampson. Yeah, I played there a lot. That's where I first played.
18th.
18th, right.
Okay.
I played with various people there. I think that's where I first met Dave Posman too.
What was that place on 22nd and Locust or Pine?
Oh, there was a place that was very short-lived called Curtains.
Curtains.
Locals didn't play there.
No.
I saw Art Blakey there when Wallace Roney was still with them.
So where was this?
I think it was the old Just Jazz at 21st and Arch.
Okay.
Yeah, it was the Philadelphia Jazz Society that was founded by a piano player from Harrisburg. He's the.
Who, Steve Rudolph?
Yeah, they used to book. They were the ones who booked that stuff in there.
Oh,
But they were only around for a couple of years. Yeah, you and I came up the same
similar, yeah.
time. Yeah, so a lot of the clubs were the same.
How about JJ's Grotto?
That was a little later. That was mostly Jimmy Bruno and
Yeah.
guitarists. I did play there towards the end with, bless his soul, Pete Colangelo Jr.
Oh yeah, yeah.
There were a lot of places that lasted very short. There was the original Zanzibar Blue. I used to play there with Juanita Holiday.
You worked for the Bynums?
I don't think maybe, did they own it?
They owned it.
Oh wait, you know what? I didn't work there when it was Zanzibar. They had already moved and it was called Cyprus when I worked there with Juanita.
Okay.
I saw Miss Justine sing with Gerald when it was Zanzibar Blue.
Did you ever play Zanzibar?
At the Bellevue?
At the Bellevue?
Yeah, a few gigs here and there.
Yeah.
I saw various people there.
Any other clubs that come to mind as in that time period?
I mean, yeah, the chronology is a little fuzzy.
Right,
Sometimes
and who were like
there used to be a place at 22nd and South called the Hot Club. This guy Mitty Middleton, a sax player, played there a lot with Hakeem. 22nd and South.
the
Oh,
Graduate
yeah.
Hospital?
It was
Yeah.
called the Hot Club. And
Yeah.
there was a saxophonist who I guess he was fairly old at the time. I don't know what happened to him. Mitty Middleton.
Yeah. Now he's somebody that.
He should be in the Philly archives somewhere.
He is. He is only a little bit though. There's a lot that he kind of was there. and
Did he
then-
just die or disappear?
Oh yeah. He's dead now. But yeah. I wanted to ask you. Did you ever play Winston's House of Jazz in Camden?
No, I got called for it once, and then one of my students said gunfire broke out when he was loading his keyboard into the car, so I turned it down.
How about the Bijou?
I saw numerous people there, McCoy, Bill Evans,
There were
Art
more
Blakey.
National acts.
Right,
playing there.
right.
Yeah, never played there.
So Just Jazz and the Bijou, would you say those were the two where you would see national acts in that period?
I think so. There were various other places that would have stuff once in a while.
Right.
Like even like today, sometimes you'll hear about, oh, what's this place? Since
Yeah.
when do they have jazz?
But I mean,
You know.
today it's like South and Chris's are like the two.
They're the
Yeah.
famous ones,
And I
yeah.
guess what I'm getting at is, what were those
The neighborhood
equivalents?
clubs.
What were those equivalents in when you were starting out? You
Well,
were-
I'd say the Borgia, Periwinkle, the Hot Club.
Right, okay.
There was one place in West Philly, Mr. Mann's. There were a couple places in West Philly, like the Olympia Lounge. I don't know if they had jazz all the time or once a week.
Like Slim Cooper's only had jazz a couple days a week.
And what was the place, the Velvet Lounge, or was that before your time?
Sounds
It
familiar.
was on 52nd Street.
We're gonna have to get all that stuff from the microfiche machines.
Have you talked to Charlotte Price? She's still alive, right?
Yeah, she is.
She might remember some of these other places.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I've got, because we featured Gerald in the book that I just finished with.
Oh, good. Okay.
With Diane. So, Boy, this has been a great interview.
And one more. So
Yeah, I'm sorry I get so loquacious, but
no,
That's
perfect.
great.
Yeah.
No, it's wonderful.
And then the pianist that you mentioned, like anybody else
Locally?
local, not just local, that were like these were. I mean, you mentioned briefly Sid Simmons and Eddie
That you were
Green.
coming up with.
When you were coming up, like who were the pianists that were like?
well, the older ones were Gerald Bernard. There was a British guy who died, Pete Jackson,
Oh, yeah, I played with you.
Bob Cohen.
Sid.
Sid was a little younger than some of them, but
Okay. Eddie Green, maybe.
I became aware of Sid. Yeah, I guess.
Jimmy Golden was older.
Oh yeah, Jimmy Golden. I knew him. Yeah. The young crew was me and Sumi, Ori.
So you were the young Turks and these were the old heads kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I thought of it that way, but
Yeah, looking back.
I mean, I knew we were young and had a lot to learn, but
Right.
I have to say that Ori has always been one of my main influences because he was the first one I heard who was immersed. Now, I'm not one who thinks that there's one way to swing. To me, it's a more open-ended term, so I'm not into that whole dogmatic vibe about that. But because a lot of people accuse Bernard of not swinging. First of all, I've heard him do it many times, even in normal ways. Maybe not on certain gigs, but what he evolved into his own thing, I can hear how it was rooted in that. But Ori had studied with Bernard early on, but Ori impressed me because he had this quirkiness and modern harmony, but he had this totally infectious swing. And I was really intrigued by how he worked that into things and didn't sound like other people. Now I had to go through a much longer journey to acquire some of that. But even to this day, if I feel like my swing needs a boost, I'll put on some Ori. I don't think he's aware of it and obviously checked it out in certain ways, but he never went, at the time at least, he told me that he had never really gone through checking out Bud Powell heavily or this or that. He probably has in the meantime, but I was.
Go ahead.
No, I mean, but I had so many gigs with people like Larry McKenna or occasionally Bootsy or where I really felt that I had to learn the bebop idiom in a fairly regular way to function, not just for heritage, but to function work-wise.
Right.
And it helped me a lot with singers too, because Rodney Green said it best. The first time I worked with him, he was super young.
Yeah.
And I was old in comparison, but he was doing a gig, very appropriate to the gig, and he said, yeah. I said something about it. He says, yeah, just because I've been listening to Jeff Tame Watts all day doesn't mean I can come in here behind this singer and do that. So some people think of it as a total compromise. I think of it as the more different music you check out, the more kaleidoscopic stuff helps your own vision, because it's going to come out in a different way than it went in anyway. Like Wynton Kelly and Red Garland have the same language but a different dialect, right? So, and then Herbie really took off out of them, so I don't know. So yeah, kudos to Ori, because
Did you guys go checking out together? Did you
yeah,
hang out?
when he lived in Philly, yeah, we did that a
He
lot.
was going to Penn or after he was done? Because he had some bad things to say about Penn. He loved Penn as far as some of the...
Oh, we hung out at Penn.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, we jammed on Penn pianos all the time.
Okay.
And he loved his composition teachers, George Rockberg and George Crumb.
Oh, God,
Crumb, yes, he loved it. And they yelled at him for going out and playing with Bootsy.
Who, those guys did?
Yeah, well, not Crumb, but I think some of the powers that be.
Yeah, I mean, they're obviously more open-minded now than they
Yeah.
used to be.
Yeah.
But it was a fun scene, yeah.
So you guys were hanging out, going to shows.
Yeah, we did stuff all the time. There used to be a place we played out there too, at 38th and Chestnut.
Oh, the Chestnut Cabaret?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Oh,
they had jazz shows there
Okay.
once or twice a week.
great.
That's the first place I ever saw the McCoy Tyner Big Band, and that was the first time I saw Robin Eubanks since I played with him.
Yeah. Yeah, that was great, that place.
Yeah. It was
Well-
mainly a rock club, but
Is it?
it was.
Yeah.
But they did have jazz
Yeah,
nights,
yeah, right.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, this has been great, Tom. You've been very informative.
Did you enjoy it?
Oh, sure, yeah. I mean, it's sort of like when you asked about how the heart attack affected playing. I don't really know. I mean, I have a stronger sense of life and what it takes to keep living.
Right.
That's all I can say.
That's important.